Hi, this is Melanie of Pardesi Reviews, and I'm here with special guest Alisa Rivera, and we're going to talk about AK versus AK. Okay, this movie, I'll be honest with you, like, there's been so many spats in Bollywood this year. When they started their social media campaign of Anil and Anurag, who I both follow on Twitter, sniping at each other in Hindi, which I didn't even know what they were saying to each other, but I'm like, I was rolling my eyes like, oh God, here we go again.
Totally.
That's another thing, because you could totally imagine, because Anurag does mix it up and get into it with everybody on Twitter. And so it just was totally plausible that they would have this spat, but it was all for show for this movie. And I really didn't know anything about it going in. I did watch the trailer, which they don't give that much away. They show essentially one of the opening scenes of the film where they're at a film festival panel, which I have been to so many of those, and it's like it completely captured that kind of moment where you have these people that normally maybe wouldn't be sitting next to each other on a couch and are talking, and something happens and somebody throws water, and then so we're going to have a spoiler filled discussion of this movie. So just to say at the beginning, both Alisa and I would agree that you need to see this film because it is a riot. It is probably the best Hindi film that I have seen this year. It has been a horrible year for Indian cinema.
Yeah.
So many good films have been pulled and rescheduled to next year. And it felt like, there was nothing to be excited about. But I started to see the buzz of excitement when this film came out. Coincidentally, maybe not coincidentally, on Anil Kapoor's birthday, December 24th. And I started seeing the reaction on Twitter. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to stay up late and I'm going to watch this movie because it sounds awesome. And totally in my wheelhouse because I love sort of movies about movies. You know what I mean? Where they're, and I think both of us are glad that we've seen enough of Bollywood and are kind of to be in on a lot of the jokes. So anyway, before we get into spoilers, and you want to just say any brief recommendation for people to watch the film?
Well, watch it. And it's the best, it's the most fun I've had watching a movie since War. So really more than a year. And I laughed so much in this movie. It was crazy. I had to pause it 10 minutes in just to catch my breath because I was laughing so hard. But it's really interesting. Like you and me, we're both very we understand all the references and all the gossip because that's who we are. But like my husband, who's completely out of the loop, doesn't know who Anurag is. He doesn't know who Anil is yet, but he heard me laughing. So he came in and sat with me and he really enjoyed the film.
Okay, that's really interesting because I was wondering if somebody who's not steeped in all of this inside joke knowledge would really enjoy it.
I think there's a lot of levels to enjoy the film and you don't need to get all the references. And my husband, who is the most distracted person on earth, if he doesn't like a film, he will just wander away 10 minutes into it, but he sat through the whole thing with me and he really enjoyed it. So I think that speaks to the filmmaking, that it's just no matter what your entry point is into it, that you're gonna enjoy it. It's a good time.
Right. There's, like you say, there's many levels because if you know some of the things and then you enjoy, there's even added enjoyment. It's sort of like added Easter eggs, if you know certain background history. And I know I don't know all of that either. So I know for people who know the industry even better or know Anil's films even more or whatever, there were other levels that even I, that I was missing as much as I know. All right. So from here on out, completely filled with spoilers. You have a hearty recommendation from both of us to go watch this film. It's playing currently on Netflix. Now, to me, that's part of the whole thing, is that it is a Netflix production. It's not the typical length of a Hindi film. It's under 2 hours. And this director, Vikramaditya Motwane, and Anurag Kashyap, their Gangs of Wasseypur was a huge success because it played in theaters, but it's essentially a 5-hour movie that plays better as a miniseries on Netflix. It was one of the first Hindi content that really made a splash on Netflix. And so that there's a long partnership there. And so that gave them a lot of freedom. Again, there's swear words in this. There's, you're hearing
a lot.
You're hearing Anil use the F word, which was like,
and the B word and the C word, which if you follow, you start to learn the Hindi swear words.
Right. Yeah. I'm not even catching, all of what's not coming through the subtitles, but it just gave them complete freedom. And also that it didn't necessarily, while it has a lot of the tropes of Hindi films, here's the car chase, here's, how many fathers whose daughter is kidnapped movies are there, right? But it gave them complete freedom to do things in a completely different way. So I didn't know the background, but I was reading today. This is a project that this director has been wanting to do for 7 years. And initially, it was supposed to be AK versus SK. It was supposed to be Shahid Kapoor, and that his wife would be kidnapped, which would be a completely different kind of film. And I actually think it is 100 times better. That it is an aging superstar, Anil Kapoor, that his whole family is in the film, that it's his daughter, that his son is a part of it, his brother. Like, it just added a whole nother dimension to it to have Anil Kapoor playing an exaggerated version of himself that, it just had so many layers of this aging, star trying to kind of, you're seeing him when you first see him, he's filming some sort of patriotic film. So he's wearing this bedraggled Air Force uniform for the whole film because he came straight from the set. But it's like, is he too old to be the hero? That is also part of the film. And then
there's so many levels that this is working on, because Anil represents he's representing institutional Bollywood, right? He's representing there's been and it's ironic that this was written 7 years ago, because this year has been all about the nepotism debates. And there's been this rage against the Bollywood establishment, and it has gotten very mixed up with the political situation in India, which I want to tread on carefully because I am not knowledgeable enough to really talk about this. But I think it's important to contextualize the film. It's not an accident that Anil is wearing a uniform. Right. And I want to get into that because there's actually a big debate online about it right now, and I want to weigh in on that. But Anil has been a star for 40 years, and he is someone who is, as insider as it gets. Yeah. And so the film is working on so many levels, because the way it starts out is Anurag positions himself as being the rabble-rousing outsider who's the true auteur, railing against the empty, soulless Bollywood machine.
Yeah, you can only succeed if your name is Kapoor,
Right. And And so they have this fight in the beginning. The whole thing is, oh my God, so funny, because they have this fight in the beginning, and Anurag throws a glass of water in Anil's face, and then the news media jumps on it. And if you've been following some of the big news stories, it was like, I don't even watch Indian TV, and I was screaming in laughter because it was so much, very familiar. And then Anurag's whole life falls apart because the public turns against him. And even the scene, the cameo by Nawazuddin Siddiqui was... or Siddiqui, I guess it is. Anyway, I was screaming during that. That's when my husband came in the room and went, "What is going on with this movie?" Because I was laughing so hard in that scene, right?
I'm done doing dark movies.
Yeah. Oh my God, it was so funny. And then, so Anurag's life falls apart, and then he schemes up, or he thinks he does. So there's so many levels on which this is clever, because Anurag's character himself portrays it as, I came up with this amazing film idea, but then you see that it wasn't his idea. It was the film student he's sleeping with, her idea. And there's so many levels when I saw her in bed with him, I again screamed. I was like, it was so funny. And also just gross and like, yeah, of course he's taking credit for her idea. Of course he's not gonna like admit that it came from her, you know. And so then he launches this guerrilla attack, basically film attack against Anil. And we're off to the races. So initially the film kind of positions this as the upstart tearing down this institutional person represented by Anil. That's why I'm saying I think the uniform is really important. People are saying, well, it doesn't mean it's disrespectful to the Air Force. And I'm like, it's not really about the Air Force. It's not an attack on the Air Force. It's talking about institutions in India, and Bollywood is an institution, but also the bigger institutions that are like failing people to a large extent right now. And
well, I'm sure there is a little message of how much partnership there has been between government and so many films are feel like propaganda for the military. And
did you think it was like a slam against Akshay Kumar? I think it might have been a little bit, because he's AK and he also does all these patriotic films.
I don't know if it's one particular person, but just maybe that whole kind of military industrial film complex that just they're so so intertwined. And
and so the uniform gets more and more degraded as the movie goes on, and that's very deliberate. It gets bloodstained, it gets torn. It's like, and so does Anil himself, right? He gets bloodied and beaten up and so forth as the movie progresses.
And get hit by a car. Oh my God.
And hit by a car, right.
And when Anurag shows up and he says, "Did you get the shot?"
Right. Oh my God. Well, and I just realized, I don't think we brought up the main premise, which is that Anurag arranges for Sonam to be kidnapped.
Right.
And then holds her ransom and basically tells Anil that you have like however many hours.
Right. You have until sunrise.
Right. You have until sunrise. And the thing is, like, Anil has done TV shows
24
24, right, with that premise. So it's playing on so many different levels,
right? Again, it wouldn't have been the same if it had been Shahid. It just
not at all.
There's so first of all, mad respect for both Anurag and Anil for doing this movie, for putting themselves out there. I mean, Anurag and the director have this long partnership, and they had a production company together. They did Gangs of Wasseypur together. So I'm sure Anurag was like, "This sounds funny." And I always enjoy Anurag as an actor. He just sort of has that face that he's good playing a villain. Like, he just has that face, right? And he's sort of like, when he grins, it's sort of an evil grin. So, and I think he enjoyed being able to take all these pot shots. It's all in fun, but he was able to say some things probably that he, would like to say. But then Anil, mad respect for him to do this kind of edgy kind of script. And what I heard was he was just like, "I'm willing to do it, but you're going to have to approach my family individually for them to participate." So the director had to ask Sonam, and then Sonam was like, "Oh, my dad's doing it? Okay." I mean, but there's all these jokes about she's now the bigger star in the family,
right.
And that and the whole subplot of Harsh, the son, who has had flops, and then begging the director oh my God. I mean, it was mad respect to him for being willing to go there and make fun of himself and the whole family, like, mad respect, but especially Anil, because I mean, there's so many points where you're seeing he's in all these situations and he's asking for help, but no one will give him help unless he takes a selfie with them, unless he literally dances like a monkey, unless he does an Instagram commercial, like to get the CCTV, to get the footage of the kidnapping when he goes to the hotel where his daughter is supposed to have done an event. like the only way that anyone will help him is if he leverages his stardom. He can't just say, I'll give you $10,000 or whatever. It's like, no, you have to. And then his wife is like, wait, you're late to your birthday dinner, but you're doing Instagram commercials. Like,
right. Yeah.
Because of course everybody's seeing in the family, you know, that he's posting all this stuff.
What I found really interesting though is like the film, he on the one hand, he's both victim and perpetrator. I don't know. He's complicit. Like he's all in on it. And he has this very workmanlike attitude about the whole thing. Like he's not outraged at any point when they ask him to do this stuff. He knows the drill. He knows what he's supposed to do there, and he does it, you know, and it's just so interesting.
Yeah, like the cab driver, he's trying to ask if somebody recognizes the face of this driver. And he's like, he just expects that this guy is going to have, you know, want to be in movies. Yeah, I'll get you the phone number. Just, can you help me? You know, like. I
know. And the cab driver had a script, which again made me scream. I laughed so hard. There's so many moments like that in the film. And, you know, he's been doing this for 40 years. He is a pro. I mean, Anurag is good in the movie, but it's Anil's show. I mean, he completely dominates this. He is so good in this. He is so good. It's just like, it's why, you know, like wow, this guy's a movie star. Like he's really, and
did you see Dil Dhadakne Do?
I did, yes.
Okay, so that evidently was kind of a big deal, which I didn't really realize until after I read other people's reviews. Number one, the fact that he appeared as a dad with gray hair, you know, and then he was a little bit ridiculous in a lot of scenes in that. And he was showing, he was like having anxiety attacks and panic attacks and whatever. So that was kind of the start, I think, of him saying, you know, like, I don't have to be the hero. I can be part of a really clever film and kind of spoof myself a little bit. And
then he's done such interesting work, right? I mean, later in his career. And I really respect him for that. I mean, he's subverting his image in really interesting ways. Like even when he did Eklat Ki Kodeka To Aisa Laga with
Sonam,
with Sonam, and he's the father, but his role is like he likes to cook, and he's kind of this gentle soul who isn't allowed to just express himself because there's such rigid gender roles, and then he has to grapple with supporting his daughter, and he's really good in it. I mean, he's just good. Even a movie that I didn't like Fane Khan, which wasn't a very good movie, but his performance was phenomenal. And again, a subversion.
I don't think I saw that one, but I just I feel like he is going there and doing interesting work right now at this point in his career. And again, to play this outsized version of himself, like I was struck by the fact that even his kids don't call him dad, they call him AK.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and he's an instant, and it's just really interesting to see because like they take him all over Mumbai. He's trying to find Sonam, and this how bringing him down to street level, but his stardom doesn't go away, even though he's in the masses in a way that probably he doesn't in his everyday life, but just the way he's propelled through the story. It's really interesting.
Well, there's one moment you highlighted a review. I think it was a written review on Film Companion that highlighted the scene where he breaks down in the street and he's alone and he's been struck by the car and he's bleeding and all of that. And he has this meltdown. And the reviewer's point was that meltdown scene, he's alone on the street and with just the camera woman pointing the camera at him. And in another film, that would happen in some extremely public, he'd be on stage. And then like, it's as if they had waited the point where he's in front of the crowd and it has to dance for them to help. Like if that's the point where the meltdown had happened and everyone would be reaction shots of shock. So again, it was just interesting, subverting kind of our expectations of when those kind of beats in a story like this would happen. And oh my gosh. Yeah.
And
but
that performance
you have to watch the credits of this film because the payoff. Oh my God.
No, it was incredible. And the thing is, so like going to that performance scene, and he has to go on stage and he's begging the crowd to tell him where the cab driver is, and they're all like, dance for us. And then he apparently, I haven't seen this, but it's a song of his.
Yeah.
That everybody would know, and he kills it, right? He's up there like he's really performing, even though he's beaten up. And it's just such a weird, poignant moment in the film of where
he doesn't half-ass it. He like
no, right. Even in that moment, like the training and all the years have clicked in, and he's just bam, he's on. It's really
play the music.
Yeah. But the other thing about to fast forward a bit, like when this is the big spoiler.
Yeah, big spoiler.
The big spoiler, turns out that Anil orchestrated the whole thing. He turned the tables on Anurag, and he basically baited Anurag into by basically bribing the female film student, saying, I will give you your directorial debut if you help us trap Anurag. And
so he leans it over the hospital bed, and I love it when a plan comes together. Oh
yeah. Oh my God. Yes. That was amazing. And it was so interesting to me because Anurag is positioned himself in the film, and I think a lot of his fans see him this way, as like the heroic person fighting against the system, but he gets trapped by his own hubris. He gets trapped by his flaws. He gets trapped by the fact that he was willing to steal an idea from this woman without credit. He gets trapped by his ego. He gets trapped by this idea of himself as some big rebel and doing something super edgy. And Anil is smart enough and has been in the game long enough to understand that and to use it against him. It's so well done. And it speaks to institutional power and how it's maintained, and how well,
there's so many moments that, I mean, I was just laughing, like here's Anil always has the big car and whatever, and there's a scene of Anurag, he's just on a scooter, and like the camera is following him weaving through the streets, and at one point you hear somebody say, oh, that's Anurag Basu, like using him for another successful director.
Right.
And then at many points when he says his name, people are like, oh, and he's like, no, that was my brother. And I didn't tell this film that it was his brother that directed Dabang. And obviously that is a sore point.
Right.
So delicious. It was so delicious that it was just this joke that kept coming up again. No, that was my brother.
Yes. But it's interesting because there's no hero really in this film. Everybody is sort of like corrupted by the dream, right? They're corrupted by the desire for stardom, power, whatever, and status. And but only
hold of it.
But the institutions are the ones that have the power to actually maintain, and because at the end they're at the Filmfare Awards, and that woman who sold out Anurag gets an award, and so does Anil. And I mean,
and Sonam is the one giving it to him. Yep.
Right. And so, the status quo is maintained at the end of the film, and Anurag is barely alive in a hospital bed after being shot by. So it's, one thing about this movie is it's not subtle, but I think that's on purpose. It's not trying to give, I think it's very overtly telling you something about the culture and what's going on right now. And it's not, and it's intended to be a kind of a mallet to the forehead, but it's a good mallet. It's I had so much fun. It's just such a ride, literally, because you're riding along in the streets along with, Anil, and
I mean,
there's so many funny bits in the car.
I just love because they really completely embrace the mockumentary filmmaking style. So so many scenes you're supposed to just believe it's this handheld camera and it's shaky and it's whatever. And then frequently people are like, get that out of my face, because she's gotten in too close. And then she's still capturing almost everything, but occasionally, even Anurag, he's like, cut, and then so it's just so.
Well, that scene with Boney Kapoor was really great. because he is like absolutely not put the camera down, but she puts it under the table, and then all you see is Anil's hands shaking and he's
Yeah, and
texting.
his knees bouncing, you know.
Right. And then Harsh, like a moron, why are you texting me? He was so good at playing an idiot in this movie. And, you know, again, you're right. Like, credit to him, because that's what people have said about him in real life. Like,
Yeah.
he gets insulted regularly. And so to be able to lean into that and portray what everybody thinks about him, which is
Yeah.
basically like a talentless nepotism, whatever.
Mad props.
Yeah, no, it was really well done. And so yeah, like, I mean, it was amazing. I loved it. I think I'm just curious, like, this is not a masses movie, right? This is not, I don't see this as being popular, like,
Yeah.
with the average moviegoer. I'd like to be wrong. I don't think so, though. I
Yeah,
think
I
that,
don't really know. Like, if it had played in theaters, is this just a multiplex urban center kind of a movie? I mean, there's plenty of fans of Anil out there, right? And Gangs of Wasseypur does have, and Anurag, you know, because of all of that, he does have, you know, his cultish following too, right?
right.
So, but I don't know. I don't know. It'd be interesting. I mean, supposedly, I have not seen Coolie #1, the remake yet, which I'll Christmas Day,
Not gonna
which
see it.
evidently broke streaming, you know, records or whatever. But that is a remake of a beloved film from years ago, and so you know, if families were home and the weekend and just what other new content is there? There's no competition for these films, really.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right,
To kind of judge them in the normal way, you know,
right.
to it's an this is a year with an asterisk, you know, for films because I don't even know what my best of list. This film, AK versus AK, would definitely be on my best top 5 for Hindi films, but there's just not the same volume of films this year. There's just not the same quality of films this year. I don't know. You know, it's
But I
just
kind
really
of,
weird.
I kind of get, this is just personal. I think Bollywood's been floundering for a while
Yeah.
now. It isn't just a recent thing. Obviously, the pandemic, you know, flattened, and this is worldwide, pretty much almost every industry.
Right.
But even before 2019, the only film that was noteworthy for me was War,
Right.
and then the Malayalam. I loved Kamalangi Nights. Those were like my two. And then all the Cons movies failed.
Yeah.
Failed. I mean, they made money, but you know, they didn't
Right.
completely fail, but they definitely were like not big hits. And it was a sense of like the Cons losing their way and the industry as a whole losing their way, and not really, you know,
Yeah.
nobody really. And so I think that that's something that's very, and then of course, with Sushant Singh Rajput dying and the way he died, and that whole, oh my God, awful, terrible, disgusting media storm around that, and how much that damaged the industry and how that got exploited by the powers that be to
Yeah.
distract from their own failures. It was just, there's a lot. There's a lot going on. I think that this film coming out now is very of its moment, and really hit home in
Yeah.
all those levels. Even if the film was maybe he was being prescient back 7 years ago and seeing where the trends were heading, and that the industry was going to end up in trouble because of just, things that
Well,
were happening.
I think there's so many themes that are of any time with Bollywood, and
I,
then there's certain things that can be highlighted when a film comes out. It can just be that luck of being of the moment,
yeah,
having an extra level or an extra message for viewers just because of the moment that we're all in. And I don't know. I mean, sometimes like if you tried to seek it out, it wouldn't have worked. It has to be kind of a serendipity of when something comes
right.
out. But yeah, this just definitely adds to the whole conversation. I mean, I love, you know, that they were just kind of joking about nepotism and whatever, and yet what is our some of our final shots is that film fair award ceremony. He's sitting next to his son and his
Right.
daughter is handing him the award, you know.
And I think that, yeah, and I mean, I think that that speaks to this message of like, ultimately the status quo, it's really hard to change the status quo, and power maintains power.
Right.
And when power is threatened, they have very effective tools to neutralize that threat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very, it gave me a lot. I mean, I was thoroughly entertained, like on the level of, did it make me laugh? Yes. I laughed my butt off. You know, was I riveted to the screen through the whole film? Yes. You know, it was.
I would say for me, the energy of it lagged a little bit in the parts of the second half. And then all of a sudden this credit sequence happened, and I'm like, holy crap. Like you got Anil rapping and just
Right.
like it went off to the races again. But for me, I mean, you know, I don't even know what I would have cut, but I'm just saying for me, it wasn't like I wasn't riveted through the entire thing, but it was so well done. It's like when you look back, you're like, oh my God, that was so clever. That was so clever. Oh, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And then on the level of just social commentary, now bigger than even Bollywood. I think, because I do think the commentary is bigger than just the film industry. It's really talking about something cultural going on. And this is an international thing, because I mean, like in the United States, we're having our reckoning, right, with our institutions and the failures of our institutions and power and how power gets abused. And I do think the film works on that level too, to critique that, not directly, but again, you know, Anil wearing a uniform is not an accident. You know, it's pretty pointed. I actually don't think it's subtle. And it's interesting because there's people defending the film going, oh, well, that's just incidental, or it doesn't mean anything. And I'm like, you guys, no, it actually does mean something. And the people who are upset about it have a legitimate reason to be upset about it, because it is a critique of the institution, you know?
Right. Like you said, I don't think it's not specifically the Air Force.
No, it's not about the Air Force.
I was like, oh my gosh, they got upset just because he portrayed a person in wearing a uniform, and it wasn't even that it was just that he had been, you know, an officer in a movie. But that fact that they ever showed him with the shirt untucked, that was the first thing that I heard about it, that there was from the trailer, people in the Air Force got upset. I'm like, oh boy.
And also that he was swearing while wearing the uniform. And I mean, but ironically, like, he is, for most of the film, your sympathies are with him, I think, for most of the film, because Anurag is torturing him, or you think he is, and then you find out tables turned, you know. But you like,
and then you're like, he's an even better actor than I thought. Oh my
God! Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, I think there is a much bigger critique going on here that is sublimated into a critique of Bollywood, not Hollywood, Bollywood. So I think if you're going to defend this film, you should be defending it on the level of that it's valid to use film as a medium to critique institutions, not trying to deny that the critique is happening when it very clearly is happening. You know, I mean, that's what the movie's about. It's at the heart of the film.
Yeah.
And I do wonder about, you know, Anil is so good at threading the needle, because he is able to do these subversive films, and yet his public image is of a happy family man, of a generous guy, happy-go-lucky, very well-liked, very popular, a patriarch, and yet, but he's a smart guy. He's not choosing these projects haphazardly.
Yeah.
Like, he understands what he's doing with his own image.
Right. And at the age that he is, and what role that he can really play, what roles that he can play, you know, is he just always relegated to being the father, you know? But I mean, like, you think about Liam Neeson, this is supposed to be sort of a takeoff of Taken in some ways. And I mean, how old is Liam Neeson? Like 63, 64, whatever, you know, like he was indie film darling who suddenly found himself in his 60s as an action star, and has just repeated that formula over and over again, which is just sort of crazy. But it's not.
By the way, on a shallow note, Anil is 64 years old. He looks freaking incredible.
Like his trainer is in this movie.
Yes, which was so. And again, this is like something I really love about this film, because on the one hand, it's a joke about the fact that he has this trainer who checks in with him. Where are you today on a 0 to 10 or 1 to 10 to work out? And Anil's like 0, 0. But on the other hand, it also makes it plausible that this 63-year-old guy is running all over Mumbai and able to chase down the cab driver and
Right.
it's just interesting how it works, because it's a very physical role, and it has to be
Oh my
plausible that he
God,
could
the
actually pull this
struggle.
off.
Let's talk about the when they're wrestling each other on the ground, and then, and then
Which
Anurag is
time?
reaching for the inhaler, like.
Yes. Oh my God. I screamed the first time he went for the inhaler, because it was so like, you're such a badass, and here you are reaching for your asthma inhaler. The whole fight scene in Boney's house was amazing, when they're like wrecking, or is it Anil's house, or whatever house
I mean, it may be. I was reading this article with Vikram. I mean, I think the room with the DVDs, I think that's really in Anurag's house. Evidently,
yeah.
that's his famous library of DVDs.
Right.
And then I think that may have been Anil's real house. I mean,
yeah, I think it was. I didn't know if it was his or Boney's, but I mean, when they wreck the room with the Christmas tree and he's strangling him with the lights, and then he's trying to get the inhaler. Oh my God. And then like Harsh is outside the room,
Boy, you guys are really rehearsing deep into it, guys.
Oh my God, he was such an idiot in this movie, and it was so funny. The movie's funny, and that's the other thing, because like we're getting into the meta stuff, which makes it sound like it's some serious art film, and it really isn't. I mean, it works on the level of farce, it works on the level of a thriller.
Yeah,
because that's what I asked my husband about it, and again, who has zero context, doesn't know any of the inside jokes, and for him it really worked as a thriller. Like, he was just like, well, what's going to happen next, or what's going to happen next, so I think that's really speaks
yeah.
how,
Well, I mean, we
how
should
good
say
it is.
your husband is in the film industry, so he probably just,
Yes,
there's certain levels of jokes with that he probably really appreciated too. So
absolutely. Like, on a bigger level of the jerky auteur, he definitely appreciated and understood that part of it, and also the star being the star, that
yeah.
So but yeah, it was go see it. Go see it. It is. Oh, not go see it. Like, turn it on your computer.
This is definitely a wonderful holiday present for all of us because
and what
it was just nice to have something really good to watch. I mean, oh my gosh, it would have been great to be in a theater, and comedies are never the same when you don't have people around you, but I was like cackling, laughing alone in my family room watching this. This is literally a laugh out loud kind of movie. So
same. And also, I would say, don't watch it on your computer if at all possible. Like, really put it benefits from being on a bigger screen. I don't think it would have been for me as much fun watching it. Sometimes I watch things on my laptop. You know how it is, like, when you make a choice about what you're going to watch. But this definitely was like, no, actually, watch it on the bigger screen. It benefits from that.
I mean, this director, I don't know if you've seen some of his other work, but Lutera maybe is my favorite film that he has done, and that's with Ranveer Singh and Sonakshi Sinha, probably her best role. But I couldn't watch I think his last film was Trapped with Rajkumar Rao, and even watching the trailer freaked me out so much that I have not been able to bring and I love Rajkumar Rao and I love his acting. I don't know. I'm not a horror
with
kind of
you.
person.
I'm not into that stuff either. I do want to see Bhavesh Joshi. It's been on my list for a long time, and I just haven't gotten around to it.
Okay, it did not get love, but I really enjoyed it, and I thought Harsh was really good in it. And it's just one of those, maybe it just didn't hit at the right time or whatever it was, but I thought it was quite clever, and I would love to hear your thoughts about it when you have a chance to see it. Harsh's other film, Merzia, he looks absolutely gorgeous in it, and has an amazing music soundtrack, but not completely successful as a film. Beautiful to see, but I mean, so we'll see. What we've seen with nepotism and Bollywood families, that they get chance after chance after chance. So I'll be maybe all those hints about Anurag, work with me.
Will turn out to be, yeah, it's
there's something
funny.
coming that we don't even know about. I don't know, but that Sonam, it's just interesting how, what must it feel like to have your daughter, being a bigger star than you are anymore, right? Like that's kind of an interesting thing about, I guess, just a few Hollywood families where you could have that, but it's not a regular thing, and so it does feel kind of a unique thing. Like, I love the scene where Anil goes in, where his daughter was supposed to be as part of that fashion show, and the woman he's talking to, she's just kind of like, I don't have time for you.
Yeah, she
I
was so
mean,
dismissive and rude, like the real star isn't here. Go away. I have to do my job. And I was like, wow. Yeah, yeah, there's those moments of like, where do you stand in the celebrity ecosystem?
yeah,
That's definitely part of this film.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, stars, as they age out, it happens to everyone, and then it's then they can sometimes turn and do some of their most interesting work like this, because they can kind of shed some of those trappings, which, like Sharuk tried to do with Fan. If Fan had had some of the humor and tone of this film, I don't know, maybe it would have been a bigger success. I almost think Anil is kind of the perfect, like, he has all this stardom, but he's not like in the stratosphere where he couldn't have even walked through the streets. You know what I mean? Like some
right,
other
right.
stars, I don't know that a lot of the plot of this movie would have worked, because they couldn't have even walked through the streets to do all the scenes of this film. So anyway, all right,
The co-
have to see this film. uh,
yes.
Everyone was excellent in it, and I can't wait to see what this director does next. Be it with Netflix or something else. But I love the creativity that this partnership that the Hindi industry is having, and all of the Indian film industry is having with these streaming partners, which is allowing a greater creativity without censor, and we're getting to see exciting new work like this. All
Yes.
right, so you can follow me on Twitter at Pardesi YT, and you can follow Alisa at Bollywood
Bollywood newbie.
Bollywood Newbie. And we talk a lot about K-drama, just warning you. That's what our Twitter feed. And,
That's true. But
and
there's plenty of Indian content in there, so.
there's Indian content too, but we're both sharing a love of K-drama right now during this pandemic. But anyway, do subscribe here to the Bollywood to a Pardesi Reviews channel, and you'll see more fun interviews like this, and reviews and trailer reactions.